guys, it is April from Getting Hookah With It. Today I wanted to bring you the top 5 books that I read in the summer. I had some freaking amazing reads this summer. I think this might be the best summer yet in terms of reading and getting 5-star books in my hands. I just really enjoyed it. So this was actually really hard to whittle it down to just 5. But I wanted to share them with you, so let's get into it. So first I wanted to share the Book of Negroes with you. So the Book of Negroes is a Canadian book by Lawrence Hill, and this is following a woman named Aminata. We follow her when she's very young. She is kidnapped in her home in Africa and shipped essentially across the sea and forced into slavery. And you follow her throughout her life. You follow her journey from a young child to an elderly woman. And we meet her actually when she is older. I think she's 80-something years old or even 90-something years old. And she's living in England, and she's about to, make a speech to abolitionists in Britain, and it's the beginning of the abolitionist movement. Aminata is someone that you cheer for the whole way through. You want only the best things to happen to Aminata. She was raised by her mother to understand how to help with midwifery, essentially. So she gets in to that field as a slave, and that actually really saves her in her earlier days. And this woman is sent all over the place. There are scenes in the South here, there are scenes in New York, in Canada, in the Maritimes, Africa, of course, and then England. So she has really had just a whirlwind of an experience, really. She's lived everywhere across the world, and she's had a very hard life, but there is a lot of resilience in her, and you see that right away when you start reading, and you're reading from her perspective as an older woman looking back on her life. She's got a lot of poise, and she's also got a little bit of sass, which I loved about her. I really, really loved Aminata. So if you haven't read the Book of Negroes yet, and I'm learning, the Book of Negroes was a huge book in Canada when it came out, and I felt badly that I had never read it, but I don't think it was a big book in the States or the UK, and I just highly recommend it. It's so well done. If you liked The Kitchen House, if you are in any way interested in African American history, this is the book for you. So absolutely, the Book of Negroes is way high up there. A book that is, I would be surprised if this didn't make it into my top 10, maybe my top 3, maybe my number 1 book of the year. I Am by Maggie O'Farrell. This is non-fiction about her 17 brushes with death. This was my first introduction to the beautiful Maggie O'Farrell. And what was so cool about how she constructed this book was every chapter is based on a different body part of hers that had a brush with death. So this has everything in here from neck to lungs to baby and bloodstream. She's had a lot of brushes with death. Now, one of her brushes with death really hit home for me. There's a chapter in here about the miscarriage that she had. She had a missed miscarriage, which is exactly what I had in December. And she articulated the very thoughts that I had immediately after and in the months after my miscarriage. She articulated it in a way that made me feel normal and understood and held and just cared for, because she also experienced it. And I just think there's so much power in that. So I know that it was probably very difficult for her to open up about that, but I just appreciate it immensely, because I didn't feel weird so much anymore. And I was able to open up this book and go, yes, that's exactly what I thought. That's exactly how it felt. You get me. And I'm not alone. It's just wonderful. So that's just one part of this that to me really stood out. That was the biggest thing that stood out for me. But I mean, some of these brushes with death are very dangerous, like unbelievably dangerous. She is nearly strangled. She has so many really, really scary experiences. And then some of these experiences are really health related, and health problems that she's had that has nearly brought her to death, and it's definitely brought her to the brink of death. Her writing is just outstanding. I listened to this on audio. Highly recommend that. If you get a chance, go and do that. So I am is like, oh my gosh. Thank goodness I read that. Thank goodness I read that this year. Okay, The Trouble with Goats and Sheep. This is such a sweet book by Joanna Cannon. It is about two little girls who live in a neighborhood that's very small. It's like a little cul-de-sac. One of the women, one of their neighbors, has gone missing, and they're going door to door trying to figure out why she went missing and get to the bottom of it. And they are the most endearing girls and the most endearing characters that I think I've ever read. I absolutely loved them both. But it was so fascinating to get a glimpse of all of these neighbors from children's perspectives, and to get a glimpse of the neighbors and to see what's actually going on with these neighbors. It was really good. I've never read anything that was like right in between, like a contemporary, even though this was set, I think, in the 60s. It felt like it mixed between contemporary with mystery in this beautiful way. I adored this. You kind of go back and forwards in time, seeing what happened, during this disappearance, and then also what happened just 10 years before that with a horrific thing that happened on this cul-de-sac. So you go back and forward, and you're essentially trying to untangle and figure out the mysteries of two mysteries. I loved that book. It's also the perfect summer book. You can feel the heat. So if you haven't read The Trouble with Ghosts and Sheep yet, I would recommend waiting till summer, because it was wonderful to read this. I think I read it in June or July, and I read this with Amy Poole, and I think we both really loved it. Okay, next up is a thriller, and it's Blood Wedding by Pierre Lemaitre. This was my first Pierre Lemaitre, and I thought this was so much fun. This was so much fun and so very fast-paced. This is about a woman who has moments in her life where she just forgets things, like where she parked her car. She'll think she parked her car here, and then she'll go outside and she realizes she parked it like 2 streets down. So there are things like that, which are little. So there are little things that keep happening to her. One day, the boy that she's nannying and taking care of, nannying, is that even a word? You know what I mean. The boy she's taking care of is found brutally murdered. Did she do it? She's like, oh my God, I totally killed this kid that I actually really cared for. And she goes on the run, and you follow her. Such an inventive plot for a thriller. Now, I recognize that the whole unreliable narrator thing has been overdone. This is the way to do an unreliable narrator story. This is it. In my opinion, This is one of the best thrillers that I've read, and definitely the best thriller that I've read from about an unreliable narrator, I think. There's Gone Girl too, though. Anyway, it's up there, so definitely go and check that out. And then finally, the most lovely book. These were all lovely in their own ways, but Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine. Eleanor stole my heart. She stole my heart. It was a true privilege getting to know Eleanor. I really, really just wanted to give her a hug throughout most of this. Although you start out this book and you're like, oh, she's kind of annoying. So this book follows Eleanor Oliphant, and she lives a normal life. She has a normal job, but she goes home on weekends and binge drinks. And she's very socially awkward. She doesn't have social cues down. She'll just say whatever she thinks, and she can be very critical of people, but in weird things, like critical about how someone will get on the bus or something like that, like very strange little things. And then as you go through the story, she happens to meet an elderly man who's fallen in the street on her way home from work, and a coworker of hers who's in IT, and they all form this friendship. And as the friendship grows and blossoms, Eleanor opens up, she cracks open, and you find out who she is, you find out where she's been and what she's been through, and she opens herself up to friendship, and she does that with you as a reader at the same time. And I just feel like I was so privileged. Learning about Eleanor and getting to know her character. I absolutely loved her. She will always be in my heart. Gail Honeyman can write. I can't wait for more by Gail Honeyman. So yes, that was the last one. So those are the top 5 books that I read this summer. Let me know in the comments below what the very best, okay, you can do top 3 if you want to. What were the top 3 books that you read this summer? I would love to know, and I will talk with you soon. Okay, bye guys.